So many Steam games, but so little time to play them all. The goal of this series is to try out every Steam game in my library. So this is the way things are. Firstly, we're only testing out the base games, no alternative entries or utilities, like any separate beta versions of a game that show up as their own entry. No server utilities either. We will also be testing out delisted titles. If a title's delisted, we'll let you guys know if it is or not. We also won't be testing out any anti-cheats that'll get my account banned, like Destiny 2. We'll also be ignoring any VR-only titles and separate open betas. And we'll be testing out games in alphabetical order. If we have multiple games in a series though, we will be testing them out in chronological order. Also, games that start with the will not be in the T section. Finally, this video is for entertainment purposes only. This is not a definitive test. Some games may have issues now, but in the future there may be fixes for them. If the fix is complicated, I'm probably not going to cover them. Results are subject to change. The first game on our list is Edge Extended Edition. It's a little indie gem I picked up several years ago. I think back in 2012 if I remember correctly. It's a puzzle platformer. You get from point A to point B. The main interesting part of this game is that you're a cube moving through the world as a cube would, by rolling. And given the game's isometric nature, the game can be quite mind-bending at times. You'll want to look at your map in the top left corner at all times. Yes, you can also play this game on your phone as well, as it's a mobile game, but you know what? This is actually a really good one. I definitely recommend giving it a shot. The next game on our list is Edge of Space. It's a 2D Terraria-like game. The game itself isn't really that great. It feels very janky and slippery and weirdly floaty. It's very similar in nature to Terraria. Of course, Terraria has a reference to this game in a weapon called the SDMG. I would really need to dig into this game a little more, but other than that though, I'm not really sure I can recommend it at the moment. The next game on our list is Eets Munchies. Get to the end of the level. You have limited control of the various objects you can place around the level, and as such, timing is everything as well as figuring out where to put things. The game is pretty simple to learn, but hard to master, as per usual with these puzzle games. It's a fairly entertaining game, and you can even play this on your touchscreen if so desired. All in all, it's a pretty solid game for the price. It also helps that it goes on sale quite frequently. Next up is Elden Ring. Elden Ring is a game I've already played elsewhere, but now I can play it on Steam Deck. So what are my thoughts on this From Software masterpiece? Well, open world games have gotten kind of stale, but Elden Ring shakes things up quite a bit. There's a lot of twists and turns that you'll never really expect out of an open world game. Admittedly, it's just Dark Souls in an open world, but there's always something to explore. There's always something to chase after. And while the open world isn't super duper immersing, there are plenty of different diverse areas that are worth exploring, and also a lot of loot to chase too. The open world also interconnects in ways that I really wouldn't have expected, including an overworld and a fairly complex underground system. That said, the game is still quite difficult as expected from FromSoft these days. How's it run on Steam Deck though? Well, I'd say it runs pretty well on Steam Deck. It's no 60 FPS, but you could easily cap it to 40 if so desired. And yes, while this game has easy anti-cheat, you can totally play online on the Steam Deck. So, portable Elden Ring. Am I really about to start over in Elden Ring to play this game again on my Steam Deck? Of course I am, but not before I explore all of these other games too.
You are maidenless.
And this right here is the very first Elder Scrolls game, The Elder Scrolls Arena. I've never played this game before, but it was in my library, so I had to see what was up with it. I do have to say this game has not aged well. This game was developed back when you needed to read the manual to understand how to play the game, and in the case of PC games, it's even more extreme due to the number of buttons you need to do basic things on, older PC titles. Like this. If you're gonna play the game, you should really learn how to use Steam input as well as just learn the controls for this game, because I'm not going to. Same deal with the Elder Scrolls 2, Daggerfall. Both of these games are available to play for free on Steam. You just need to be prepared for the amount of jank there is in both of these games. I'm willing to give these games more of a fair shake later on, but in the meantime though, today is not that day. And yes, this is Skyrim. To be more specific, this is the original release of Skyrim. Yes, it runs. Can you mod it? Yes, you can mod it. I'm sure someone's already put out a video on how to mod Skyrim on the Steam Deck, but if there isn't, then y'all should let me know so I can make one. And I've played Skyrim so many times that honestly playing unmodded Skyrim is kind of boring, you know? And this is LILIES, the first game I played from start to finish on my Steam Deck. Aside from Aperture Desk Job, I mean. This is definitely one of my favorite Metroidvanias. It's dark, it's depressing, it's combat oriented, it's got a lot of things I really like. And it can be fiendishly difficult at times too. I've talked a lot about this game. This game is Steam Deck verified and it runs extremely well. If you like Metroidvanias, definitely pick this one up. And this game here is Endless Space. It's a 4x turn-based strategy game, and honestly, I am not a fan of 4x turn-based strategy games. I'm just not good at them. Personally, not an authority on whether or not this game runs on Steam Deck. I mean, yeah, it runs on Steam Deck, but I'm not sure if it performs well on Steam Deck, especially during battles. But hey, it runs on Steam Deck. I mean, what more could you ask for, right? And this game right here is called Endorlight. I got this random game for some reason, I don't know why, but I got multiple keys of it and I gave one of them to one of my IRL friends. He immediately told me about how this game sucked ass, and I believed him, even back then. But seeing it with my own eyes, it's a sight to behold. Don't buy this game, it's awful. But it runs on Steam Deck, but like, controller support is janky as crap, so it doesn't work as expected. I didn't waste too much of my time playing this game, so I'm not going to waste too much of your time talking about it. Now here's a true masterpiece. This is Enter the Gungeon. I love Enter the Gungeon. It's definitely one of my all-time favorite indie games. Essentially, it's a roguelike where you explore the Gungeon. It's like a dungeon, but everything is just guns, guns, guns. The game can be fiendishly difficult, but if you just play the game, unlock more items, or perhaps even learn how to play the game, then you can definitely succeed. And plus, this game has a lot of charm. You fight bullets that shoot guns that shoot their own bullets. You can get a bullet that's a gun that shoots guns that also shoots bullets. Your hearts are bullets. If you even like guns even a tiny bit, then definitely buy this game. If you like good games in general, just buy this game. You know what, just buy this game, I don't care who you are. This is Escape from Tethys. On the sliding scale of Metroid to Castlevania, this firmly lands more on the Metroid side of things. I mean, it seems like a pretty decent game, but it doesn't really pique my interest that much. There's nothing really super interesting about it. Well, I guess aside from the fact that it runs on Steam Deck pretty well. And this game is Estranged, The Departure. The first thing to note is that despite the fact that this game allegedly has controller support, it doesn't seem to work on Steam Deck. Like X input style controls. Of course, you can assign keyboard and mouse functions to your controller. So you'll have to map your own controls, or maybe someone made controls for you in the community configurations. The game runs, though you will have to take some time to configure your own controls, which I don't have time for. I'm not really sure what the deal is, but I'll give it some more experimentation and report back later. And this is Evolvation, a multiplayer online space dogfighting simulator, in which no one is online playing the game. There are no dedicated servers up, or even private servers up. If you're looking to play a multiplayer game, there's no one playing this game. You can play against bots, but that's no fun. Yes, the game runs on Steam Deck, but no one's really playing this game anymore. You can't play the game the way it was meant to be played, with other people, against other people. And this game is Exanima. Exanima is definitely Steam Deck verified. The game runs pretty well. The game has a very experimental physics-based combat system. The game is also hard as nails due to this physics system, but it's very satisfying when you get kills. That said, this game can be a little difficult to control. Thankfully, there is a practice mode that allows you to get acquainted with the controls and the physics of the game. Is this game gonna appeal to everyone? Well, no game appeals to everyone. But this game is definitely worth giving a shot to see if you enjoy it or not. I, for one, really love these weird, janky games that have unique control schemes. And so far, this is probably the most unique game I've covered in my YouTube series so far. And this game right here is called the Expendabros. Essentially, this game is a special free version of Broforce, featuring characters from the Expendables. Basically, it's like a free demo. Unfortunately, I don't have Broforce on Steam, I have it on PS4. I'm sure it runs, I mean, Expendabros runs. If you ever wanted to try Broforce out, you can try out Expendabros. Next up is E.Y.E, Divine Cybermancy. It's a first-person cyberpunk FPS. It's got a lot of that Euro jank though, and it's based on the Source engine. It runs on the Steam Deck quite well actually. But the question is whether or not this game is a good fit for the Steam Deck. You could definitely use Steam input to map all of your controls, but in this case, there are a ton of controls, so you will need to learn your controls and learn how to play the game before you, well, you know, create your own Steam input controls. Is this game the most polished game ever? Probably not, but there's a lot of intrigue in this game, enough for me to maybe take a deeper dive into this game. And that about covers every game that starts with the letter E that I own on Steam. Now let's move on to the F section. This is Fable Anniversary. As a child, I really liked Fable 1, but aspects of it haven't really aged all that well. But there are still quite a few humorous aspects in this game, especially one part where you can choose to either rat out a cheating husband or take his bribe. I think it's pretty obvious what you should do. That said, Fable Anniversary is actually based on Fable: The Lost Chapters, which I actually haven't played. I only played the original release on Xbox. That said, Fable was one of the original poster childs of overpromising and overhyping. The first of many games Peter Molyneux would overhype. But hey, I mean, it's still a pretty decent game despite not having all of the promises that he promised us. Not to mention when I played it for the first time, I didn't know anything about these promises. That said, there are some issues with Fable as a whole that I'll probably talk about later then. Of course it runs on Steam Deck though, so that's no issue. And this is Fall Guys. Fall Guys is marked as unsupported on Steam Deck, yet as you can see here and on YouTube, Fall Guys works just fine. This is also the Steam version of Fall Guys, by the way, but in theory you should be able to get the Epic Games version working on Steam Deck. As for the Steam version of the game, you need to download Proton GE version 21. It's the only version of Proton GE that'll actually run this game for some reason. As for whether or not I think this game is fun, well, I thought it was pretty fun, until I lost, that is. Unfortunately though, this game was delisted on Steam, meaning if you don't already have this game, then your only options are either to, well, play it through the Epic Store, or you know, the Hero Game Store in this case. Or you can attempt to find a Steam key from a gray market reseller. Currently, they're not too expensive, but judging by how Rocket League's price ballooned over the years, so if you don't buy a Steam key now, you're probably not going to be able to afford one within the next 2 or 3 years. Next up is Fallen Angel. It's a top-down hack and slasher similar to, say, Hyper Light Drifter. Though in my opinion, this game is a lot slower and a lot floatier, and also, you know, you can jump in this game. And there's actual spoken dialogue instead of characters speaking in pictures. That said, later on in the game, the combat becomes a little more in-depth than Hyper Light Drifter. In my opinion though, the game still feels kind of floaty. That said, it works on Steam Deck, so here you go. Pretty decent game, if I do say so myself. This right here is Fallout 1, the original Fallout. And as you can see here, the game crashes immediately when I try to launch it from the launcher. One has to wonder why this even has a Steam Deck playable rating when I can't even play the game. Are there fixes online? Yes, I know there are fixes online. Am I gonna try them though? Well, for the purposes of this video, no. Perhaps I'll do so in an upcoming video. And this is Fallout 3. Believe it or not though, I've never actually played Fallout 3 on PC. All of my Fallout 3 playthroughs were on Xbox 360. That said, this wouldn't be my preferred method of playing Fallout 3 anyways. I would rather run the Tale of Two Wastelands mod. If you want to check out how to get Tale of Two Wastelands working on the Steam Deck, there's a link in the description to that tutorial. And yes, I've also tried Fallout New Vegas. I've even got a video guide on how to mod Fallout New Vegas on the Steam Deck. There's also a link in the description for that as well. And this is Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. And yes, this does install Ubisoft Connect on your Steam Deck. And yes, you will need to sign up for an Ubisoft account if you don't already have one. So first things first, this game will not work on regular Proton by itself. You will need to use Proton GE. That said, if you do switch to Proton GE, you will have to log in again to your Ubisoft account. And yes, if you attempt to run it without Proton GE, this happens. Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon is probably the best Far Cry they've put out. And it also runs really well too. That said, there are two major caveats. First is that this game is always online only. Second is that the online service isn't available anymore. And every time you reboot the game and press the pause menu, it'll try to connect only to fail to connect after like a minute or two. There are fixes though. Next up is Fez. Fez is a mind-bending puzzle platformer game. The main gameplay differentiator here is that you have the ability to change your perspective around. Changing your perspective not only changes what angle you're looking at the level from, but it also changes the level layout as well. This changes how far some platforms are from one another, and this also facilitates hiding a bunch of stuff in plain sight. It's kind of crazy how much this one simple mechanic changes things in its entirety. I do think it's extremely unfortunate that Phil Fish ended up leaving the games industry and also canceling Fez 2. And honestly, after hearing about what happened to Phil Fish, you can't blame him for leaving the games industry. This next game is Fight and Rage. This is a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up with some serious depth in its combat. There's lots of different ways to combo your opponents in the air and on the ground as well. And each of the 3 main characters has a bevy of different moves, including some secret techniques as well. If you like good combat systems, there's a lot to sink your teeth into here. A serious 10 out of 10 beat-em-up. Honestly, this is probably one of my favorite beat-em-ups in recent memory. And yes, this game is Steam Deck verified and multiplayer as well. And on higher difficulties, this game is quite brutal. And this is Five Nights at Freddy's sister location. This is the only Five Nights at Freddy's game I own on Steam, and I didn't even buy the game. Honestly, I'm not really sure I'm into these games. It doesn't seem all that interesting to me, but hey, I mean, it works on Steam Deck. That said, this game is like 90% mouse-based, so you will want to get good with your mouse options. I'm not really sure what's so appealing about Five Nights at Freddy's. I guess it's just not for me. But whatever, I guess. And this is Flesh Eaters. This is a tower defense game. Well, it's not a tower defense game because there's no tower to defend. I'm not really sure how to describe this game, but it certainly feels like a tower defense game. It works on Steam Deck, but you'll want to optimize the heck out of your Steam input controls. This next game is For Honor, and immediately this game wants me to log onto Ubisoft Connect again. Which is totally stupid because I totally pressed Remembered Me when I logged in for Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. But I guess that's just the nature of Proton compatibility, eh? So yes, you can play For Honor on your Steam Deck. There's 2 major issues though. The first major issue is that you have this obnoxious Ubisoft Connect stuff in the top right corner. To dismiss these messages, you would typically need to press Shift F2 to pull up the Ubisoft overlay. Yes, that's right, Ubisoft has their own separate overlay. So you will have to dedicate one of your buttons to Shift plus F2. You can make this warning go away permanently, but that requires fiddling with options in the overlay itself. But yes, you can play For Honor. Bot matches anyways. You can also play the full campaign as well if so desired, though ultimately you will want to play multiplayer, and unfortunately, due to the anti-cheat, you can't play multiplayer on the Steam Deck. And I know for a fact that Ubisoft has the ability to make it work on Steam Deck. I mean, Ubisoft is one of the biggest video game publishers in the world. They can afford to make it work on Steam Deck. They just won't, for some reason. And this right here is Fork Parker's Holiday Profit Hike on Steam Deck. It works perfectly on Steam Deck. It's also totally free on Steam as well, so if you're looking for a free game to play on your Steam Deck, you can play this. And this right here is Four Kings, One War. It's chess. It's chess with an added layer of dumb bullshit. Instead of 2 sides, it's 4 sides, and you control 2 of them. To account for this, each turn you and your opponent has the ability to move 2 pieces. Either 2 pieces from one side, or 1 piece from each side you control. And yes, while this game runs on Steam Deck, it runs horribly. There's no reason for a chess game to run this badly on Steam Deck. At least on default settings that I haven't touched at all. This is Friday the 13th, the game. It doesn't work on Steam Deck. It also doesn't work with Proton GE either. And yes, it's an anti-cheat thing. And this is FTL. FTL has a native Linux version, so of course it would work on Steam Deck. That said, this game was definitely not designed for any controller inputs whatsoever, so you will have to set up your own Steam controls. That said, there's nothing to complain about. This game runs great and you can play the game on Steam Deck. Heck, you can even use a touchscreen if so desired, though in this case, I'm not going to. FTL is also extremely good. Definitely play this game. Yes, it's a bit of an older game, but it's worth playing through. It's also a roguelike, so no 2 playthroughs will ever be the same. And yes, there's tons of secrets and unlocks to discover in this game. And this is Full Metal Furies. It's made by the same developers of Rogue Legacy, and honestly, I didn't even know this game existed. But of course, I recently picked this game up. It's a beat 'em up, but not quite. I'm not really sure how to describe this game, because it's not quite a beat 'em up, but I mean, it basically is. But you have a lot of characters that do melee attacks as well as characters that shoot as well. So the line isn't very clear-cut in this case. I'd say it's more of a hack and slasher than anything really. And yes, this game is also co-op as well. Like most beat 'em ups, this game is best played with multiple people. Not to say that this game isn't fun single player, but it's definitely a lot better when you have multiple people playing with you. This latest installment of Steam Library Check has been very long overdue, I'll admit, with the last installment being published about 2 months ago. Don't worry though, I'm committed to launching and testing every single Steam game I own on the Steam Deck. So, what did we learn today? Well, we learned how to make a video over 20 minutes long because I combined both E and F into a single video. I decided to do a double feature because it's been so long since I've made one of these videos anyways. And yes, there are a ton of games that I discovered that are actually quite good in my library that I just haven't touched for whatever reason. And of course, there are a couple of stinkers that I know I'll probably never touch again. That said, it's a very fun experiment showcasing what I actually have in my library, and seeing how much of it actually runs on Steam Deck, whether out of the box or with a little bit of tinkering action going on, especially with Proton GE. My hope is that in the future, these games will run without Proton GE. If you wish to directly support high-tech lowlife, you should check out the link in the description below for our Patreon page. And if you like this video, you should give it a thumbs up and subscribe as well. And if you want, you can also join my Discord server. As always, links in the description down below for all of this.